Daiva, one of the most discussed questions now in Ukraine is Ukrainian language quotas. I mean quotas in media, on TV, on radio programs. How this question was solved in Lithuania?
We haven't such quotas in Lithuania, in fact, but still all audiovisual programs on TVs, radios should be subtitled or dubbed. Of course, exception is for those programs which are for ethnic minorities or for learning purposes.
So even you have a guest who speaks, for example, Russian or English, and you know that the audience understands him well, even in this case, you have to subtitle.
Yes, it should be translated in all cases when your communication is it's open and it's for all. It's not private communication. And in all of these cases, at cinemas as well, it should be translated. So all citizens of Lithuania have a right to understand what is said. Law on state language has been adopted in 1995, right after gaining our Lithuanian independence. And first of all, status of Lithuanian language, of course, besides Russian language, has been settled in our legal acts in 1989. It was one of the first proposals and demands of our Lithuanian Sąjūdis.
Isn't it too expensive for TV channels or radio channels to subtitle every speech, every product in different language?
Some provisions of policy, and we are speaking about language policy as a part of state policy, sometimes they are expensive, but we are talking about values and about status. You can achieve status of state language if you do not use it.
And what was the way which Lithuanian language passed after collapse of Soviet Union? We know that Russian language, of course, dominated, and their Russification was very strong. So what happened after independence?
I suppose in Baltic states, Russification wasn't so strong as in some other republics of Soviet Union. And after gaining our independence, as I told, one of the first steps and demands of our Sąjūdis, the main wave of reforms, was establishing status of Lithuanian language in public administration, in legal acts, in public communication as well. And when in 1989 this regulation have been implemented, after Russian language has to pass away from most of public communication areas.
What are the main functions of your commission?
Our commission consists of 17 members. They are scholars, linguists, most of them, and from research institutions, from universities. And we're dealing with implementation of language policy. We're acting like institution for experts in language policy. They provide some recommendations on language usage and recommendations of codification as well. And of course, we are advisors for our parliament. We are under the Parliament of Lithuanian, of Republic of Lithuania, and of course, we give advices for our government and other institutions, and for society as well. We have consultation group, and usually we receive about 200 questions about language usage per day.
What kind of advice can you give us an example?
For example, we can advise what provisions of our language of law should be improved, what terms should be used in legal acts, the system of approving and harmonization of terms in legal acts in Lithuania. We have law on term bank, and all legal acts should be provided by legal terms approved by Language Commission. So we are working with European Union institutions, with translators in European Commission, in European Council, European Parliament, and we're acting as one window system. We are asking, for example, for term, for other language issues, and we usually answer. Language Commission is something like language parliament. We are adapting our documents, legal acts, as recommendations, as some legal provisions, as advices for politicians, for state institutions. And State Inspectorate is an institution for implementing of legal acts, and they control language usage. And in Lithuania we have provisions about correct and suitable language. And Language Inspectorate is involved in preventing language incorrectness in public science, for example, public communications, in books, and other publications. So it's our specific.
It's a very important question now, because we know that new technologies just now are talking with us mostly in English, and it's a problem how to translate it into national languages.
Only some of them are translated to Lithuanian in Lithuania, for example, because if we have no such word for new device or new technology, sometimes it is good to create new word, but sometimes it is not suitable, or even society can reject it, and in these cases we are proposing loanword.
Are there in Lithuanian society people who are fighting for correct language? In Russian and Ukrainian we call them grammar Nazi.
Of course, there are a lot of names for that activities in Lithuania as well, but still I think there is no modern language without language or grammar norms. We should be wise, and we should be careful about the language, and it is not something we should reject. We should learn language at school in such level that it couldn't cost us a lot in our work, in our job, in our studies. So the main purpose of our language policy in this aspect is to make Lithuanian language useful and suitable for all communication activities. And we should use one language in public communication. In private communication, of course, there are a lot of varieties of language. And in private, we can speak in dialect or jargon or however we want.
What do you think, is now the English language a threat for Lithuanian, and how do you deal with it?
I think that there is no languages as dictators and languages as victims. There are only people who make one language dominating. But still, English language is our reality, and of course, in nowadays society, nowadays Europe, you should know English.
But at the same time, we should develop our national languages.
Yeah. Of course. And our concern is about Lithuanian language and Lithuanian language policy. We should create such conditions that Lithuanian language could be equal in all European language family. Lithuanian language should be used in information technologies, in virtual space as well, because a lot of our social life is on internet and social networks nowadays, and we should worry about it. How to create more convenient possibilities to use Lithuanian language, to localize, for example, computer programs Lithuanian, how to create machine translations, and we are involved in such activities, and these activities are supported by European Commission. How to create international open digital services, public services in all space of European Union, which give possibility to use, for example, Lithuanian language, asking for help, for example, in Ireland or Spain or in other country. We can't, unfortunately, learn all languages, but we can use our language to gather more knowledge from other languages and communication in other languages.